Okay, everybody. Well, great to have you here and that you found the time to join us for this wonderful session on fundraising. Before I introduce our speakers and tell you more on them, just wanted to give you a quick introduction onto DueDash in case you're not familiar with us. With DueDash, we want to help startups become investable. Where is still the issue that many founders, many startups to this day, don't know how to raise funds, how to convince investors that they should actually start engaging with them, really convince the investors, and then go into the due diligence process. Whereas a lot of question marks, and many startups, many founders don't know what's the exact process, how to do that. And with DueDash, we set out to change that and solve these issues. And we have actually this month specifically on fundraising. We want to help you on any topics specific to fundraising. How can we help you? Which questions do you have? And we want to address these. In general, I also want to let you know, the DueDash community is quite young. We started a bit over 3 months with that community, but it's not the last thing what we're going to do. It's the first thing we're going to do to help you connect, share, and learn. In the long term, we plan a full-fledged application to lead you through the funding process. So there's a lot more to come from us in the near future. And with that, I would go over into that event and that you can learn from our great speakers. We have 3 speakers tonight. First, I want to introduce Neeraj Tyagi, managing partner of Venture Catalysts, which is India's #1 angel investor network with over 5,000 angel investors, where I fundraised $52 million across 60 startups in 2018 alone and facilitate a lot of investments in early stage startups. Neeraj Tyagi, of course, brings on top of that years and years of experience as an investor, and we're happy to learn from him. We also have Shani Levy-Mendel, the founder and CEO of Luxurit VIP. Luxurit VIP is doing investment matchmaking, investor relations, business development, street partnerships, anything that you would need as a startup for your investment needs. So she is the person you can reach out to if you want to have support on finding investors and getting into discussions and connect. And we also have Nikhil Madan. He is a serial entrepreneur investor and one of the co-founders of DueDash, and also responsible for investor relations here at DueDash. So also happy to have him here for the session. This is an AMA session, so we will have a lot of time and opportunity for you guys to ask your questions to our speakers. But before we go into the questions that you guys have, I wanted to start with something simple for all the 3 speakers. I will ask you all the same questions and would like to go you through that. And my first question would be to you: what does a startup need to deliver before it should even start approaching investors? Because what I see often is that many founders will just go to investors and say, I need money. But not many startups actually think about, are you ready for investments? And maybe let's start with Neeraj. You being an angel investor, also investor, you know about this. What does a startup first need to deliver before it should even come to you?
So there is 2 parts to this question. Can you hear me, guys?
We can hear you.
Okay, right. So there are 2 things actually that I need to kind of convey here. So we feel that startups should, or the founders should, start reaching out to investors as soon as possible. Okay, but it's just the takeaway is different. Okay, when you're starting your journey, it's good to touch base with the serial and the senior angel investors. Okay, but not for the funding thing. Probably, I think that's the time you should reach out to those guys. Okay, to take the feedback on your journey, to take the feedback on the idea that you are coming up. And I think that's the best way to kind of engage them right at the very early stage, because that's time the expectation is not the funding. The expectation is actually just to kind of involve them in the process. I think that's the best way, okay, to get the things going. But if you're asking me that what exactly you need to do before you actually ask them for a funding, so definitely you need to be ready with the product. At least that's a minimum expectation that we expect from a founding team. We also would like to see that what exactly they have done with the product. Have they reached out to the community, to the customers, okay? And what is the initial all kind of efforts that they have done to kind of convince the first few customers to adopt the product, and what is the relationship that they are able to create with the customers. So I think even if it is not the basically the revenue stage, okay, even if it is just uh, the engagement piece, okay, it is just the adoption of the product. Even that is a good indicator actually for an investor to gauge that uh, uh, how good is the product and how good is the team in terms of executing the idea. So these are two things, okay. So I'm not asking on revenue. So I'm so let's not get confused. So I'm not saying that you need to have revenue and only then you need to reach to the investors, but definitely some kind of customer onboarding, be it a freemium model, be it just a POC in case you're an enterprise client. Uh, but yes, some kind of customer engagement and some kind of customer validation is something that we are looking at. So a good product and some customer validation. Revenue, no revenue, I think we can still take on. So we have funded, just to give you a take on that, we have funded a lot of companies where we have seen that yes, the startup team has created a MVP and they have launched it and they have onboarded at least, especially in the case of marketplace, because they have to solve both the side of the market, supply side and the demand side. So even if they have like uh, uh, solved and cracked one side of it, that itself is a good basically indicator for us. Like for example, if it is a healthcare telemedicine kind of like okay startup, and in case they are able to convince the supply side, which is the doctor's side, they have onboarded say 100 good doctors, okay, they may not have been able to like address the second part of it, okay. They may be just at the very early stage on their journey. But I think we are happy that at least the doctors have liked the product and they started adopting it. They're coming to the platform, creating profile, and they are good to go. So I think that stage, I think is perfectly fine for us. If I could have answered your questions.
No, that's a good start. Then I think an interesting point that was raised here is, like where of course startups, where it's not about funding, it's about getting feedback. And then here I would ask you, Shani, like a lot of startups, I guess, who approach you might not be even ready for funding. What usually do you do with the startups? What do you tell them? Like, how do you actually get to the point that you can start speaking to the investors so that you are able to show them to investors?
Yes. So, hi everyone. I think it really depends on the startup and what is the idea behind it, because there are some startups that have actually nothing, but they have everything. I mean, they can lose points of one investor in all aspects. No one even would like to look at them. But for another one, a different investor, it will be a perfect match. It will be just the idea would be perfect. So I think it's very general, but in general speaking, I think if a startup have like an awesome idea and hasn't even started doing anything toward technology or toward to have an actual product, so the minimum he has to do is to have a research, a deep research of at least knowing the market, knowing where you're aiming, knowing like who are your competitors in the market, know a bit about what they did before you and how you're going to do it differently. So once you have all of these aspects, it will be so much easier for you to sell your idea for investors. And what I do for startups, usually when they come to me and they don't yet ready in terms of investability point. So my first suggestion is know your place, know your market, know the global market, know startups that are around you, do sort of the same things, and be unique. Be unique at what you deliver, what you would like to deliver, and do a good research. So I think this is like the basic.
That's a good point. But I would also go directly from Shani to you to Nikhil. Because like you have heard thousands of startup pitches, in the last years, as you also looked for startups to invest in. What's on your side? What is usually like for your criteria to say you are not in the box for me to talk about investments? You might first need more help on building your business.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I stopped counting after screening 4,000 startups. So very quickly, what I would really tell anybody who has decided to go down the fundraising route, money is a trust business. Getting somebody's money is a trust business. You've got to establish the currency of trust pretty early in the day. And as long as you remember this and do exactly what Neeraj said post in his opening statement, I think that's a complete recipe in itself.
That's a good start on that.
Yeah.
We actually already have a lot of questions already from the people. So I think we can actually just go into that. I think let's start with one from Satya. So she said, during COVID-19, if you have a spin-off to a business that is very, very different from your primary business focus area, how do you tell that to a new investor? Because many people might have an idea and now we're switching that. And she just added some information that she's a co-founder of something called Voice in Aerospace, and we're developing like manned drones in India. So we had to do like a spin-off, focusing on health, safety, sanitation. I guess maybe Niraj, you want to have like some input on that?
So okay, so we, Michael, you know that we have a large portfolio of company, almost 100 startups that we funded, and some of them actually find themselves on the wrong side of the COVID. Okay, when this whole thing started. Yeah, so from that aspect, I can tell you that yes, it was difficult for the businesses also. It was difficult for the investors also to how to kind of react to this. But eventually, everybody understand that you have to have a balance between the short term and the long term thing. So if you are doing something which is in extension to what you're doing, it makes sense. If it is totally different, then it is at times basically it will be difficult. I think in the time to come, we need to assess how that new project either basically can become a core focus of the company or a side project. So that is something I think over the period of time we will be able to assess. But right now, as far as the execution is happening basically at a good pace, we don't mind actually backing the startup. In fact, like in some cases, we have given an additional follow-up funding also to the startups to kind of like just if we are getting good traction in something which was not earlier their core focus. So, for example, there is a company called Supply Note. It's my portfolio also personal, and so they were serving the supply chain. They were solving the supply chain automation for the restaurant, and grocery was never a focus. Okay, but they switched to the grocery side just because there the traction was much more. The transactions were happening much more. The customers were there, and restaurants was totally shut down. So I think it was a logical switch basically from a different TG, which was not their product. So they had to make a lot of like effort in terms of customizing the product itself. So on a technology side also, and also in terms of approach and everything. But yeah, so that's the kind of like product switching, targets, TG switching, and new innovation and pivot that most of the people actually have done this. So I think investors have taken all of this in the good spirit. Okay, so they have helped the founders.
Good point. Stephen mentioned that like it's, you can pivot, as long if it's like still close to what you're doing, it's fine. If it's more far away, I guess you might need to have to do some more hard-hitting explanation. Talking about also when you change things, we have a question from Magno. I think I would give this to you, Shani. He said his company is in a developing country, which is Brazil, but he wants to sell more to the US and Europe as he has better relations than locally. And now he asks about, should he incorporate the company abroad to look for investor, or doesn't this matter and he can stay with a Brazilian company?
So I'm not sure I quite understand, but let me see if I can take
Maybe I
like
reframe, like you can ask, but I think like what he meant is, maybe I didn't say it properly, that basically he has a company in Brazil, and I think he wants to reach out for investors in Europe and US. And now he's thinking, should he incorporate as a US company or company in European Union?
Okay, so basically I do that a lot with companies in Israel. Usually they start small, they start here locally, and most of the startups, like let's say today we have 7,000 startups in Israel, raising for, like, looking for funding. So most of them are aiming globally. They want to do strategic partnerships around the globe. Usually it's the US and Europe. So I can address it like from my point of view. I'm not sure if Brazil is the same, but I guess in some terms it is. So once a startup wants to reach out to a different market, to a global market, I think that the basic knowledge you should have is first who are the main actors, the main companies in his field that can actually help his company growth, and with that will come also investing and private investing or corporations investing. I think like the main thing is to know, once you approach to let's say a huge corporation in the US, it won't help if you just address like an info at something, someone email address, because it won't happen. You'll have to do a bit of research to understand who are the main players inside your organization, and only then to approach personally to a specific person who you know is in charge for taking these kind of decisions that can help you grow your own startup, that can take it to the next level, that has already the network and the connections and the infrastructure for your startup to grow. So it's divided into two. First, research. I always say that it's always true. If you have the knowledge, it will be so much easier. You won't just waste your time. And second of all, you have to approach personally. Everything is personal. Even from the largest corporations, strategic partnerships are made with people. It's the one thing that I have to say. From my experience, once you have met the right people and you connected personally, everything is open. Like the sky's the limit. So
Yeah, definitely good points, like adapting what's requirements. I know like many startups actually incorporate in the United States for the simple reasons for funding, or we change, like the company to a USC Corp, usually like in Delaware,
right.
just to make it more simple. But of course, requirements is important. Not every startup needs to be a US company, and there's alternatives to that.
Right.
Going from that to a very other topic which is interesting is social entrepreneurship. We have a question from Vidya, which I would ask you to, Nikhil, which is, how would you see funding for a social tech startup? She says, I see that the returns are not 10 times X. What is your opinion on that?
So, Vidya, thank you for your question. First of all, there are two elements which you need to understand. And I think one is that VC rate of return is about 3 to 5x. It's not 10x. However, now that's a VC rate of return. Since the failure rates are very high, they expect to really do hit the ball out of the park with at least one startup in their own portfolio, 1 to 2 startups in the portfolio. Now, speaking of social entrepreneurship startup, there are very specific funds which are focused solely on social entrepreneurship, social impact startups. And I think it is very important to determine who are your potential investors. You can't possibly be, and as far as I know, some extremely large funds have also carved out a social impact startup fund from within their funds. I don't know what is the status in India, Neeraj could probably tell you more about that, but there are enough and more social impact funds out there, and you need to be focusing only to discuss with those funds. In addition to that, there are some angel networks which I am privy to, who are focused purely on social impact startups. Now, that does not necessarily mean that your startup cannot deliver 5x or 10x or 3x, whatever it may be. But then these are long haul businesses. They will take time to really, become extremely large, if at all they become large. So you will have to, that's a path you've chosen. Stay with it. There's a more intrinsic motivation behind your startup rather than, making money. As far as, and if at all you want any external funding, you're going to have to make some money. That's clear. So you'll have to only deal with those funds or angel investors whose thesis is social impact startups.
I just want to pick up a point, I guess, that you mentioned here also with Niraj, that he might know about in India, social funds. Do you know about the state of social entrepreneurship in India at the current moment, the funds, and how well does it work?
Yeah, so let me first switch to the mobile thing. I think I'm losing my video. Just give me a second now.
No worries. Let's just switch to that.
Yeah.
And then we have it ready here. In the meanwhile, of course, you guys ask your questions. Anything else that you guys still have, put it in the chat.
Neeraj is live.
I think.
Great.
Is it good?
Yes.
Okay. So on the social front, let me just give you two takes. Okay. One is purely from the investor side. Okay. Like in our portfolio, we are pretty sector agnostic. Okay, and we have never differentiated between two businesses. Okay, purely from the origin of their vision. Okay, so as long as the business is self-sustainable, it's making impact and it's also making money, I think for us it qualifies actually for the investment thesis. So we funded a company called Impact Guru. They are doing the medical crowdsourcing, and it's a very, very successful model. It's a balance of the kind of social impact that they are bringing on table. And this is basically a Harvard Innovation Lab project, started from the university days. So imagine a project that was just a project at a university level. They created a business model out of it, and then ensured that, yes, it becomes a huge impact project, and also at the same time have a lot of commercial viability around it. And I can tell you, when we opened this deal, so they were looking at only $500,000 from us, and we went on and on and on, and we have to increase the round at least 2 times, and the deal actually end up raising almost 2 million. And the biggest of the hospitals in India. So we got Apollo guys, the Reddy's family, into the deal. Okay, purely on the merit of the business. Okay, there was a lot of social impact, which was a takeaway there. But I think on the merit of purely on the business, I think they invested in that. In fact, there's a lot of CXOs from the Apollo family. The CFO himself basically invested in that company, and that was the case across the. And they were getting standing ovation just because the kind of impact they were making everywhere. They used to go and make a pitch. So it was a great story, okay, and that has given us a lot of confidence to then beyond that have gone basically to fund at least 4 to 5 such projects, which you can typically call them a social impact or a social entrepreneurship project, but we never looked at categorizing them basically in that kind of lot. The other thing that I want to make basically a statement here as far as these kind of large impact projects are concerned. So corporate CVC is one area that where you should look at raising funds, because all the corporates, they anyway traditionally were doing CSR, and now that they have a CVC focused funds also for startups. So I think they have a lot of budget and leeway and a strategy and a policy to support this kind of startup. So it serves basically two-way to them. So that's also is a good route to raise money.
Very well. Well, that's very good. That's a good idea. That's a very
Yeah.
good idea. So Vidya's startup is based in Germany, right?
Yeah, I think in Germany, and I don't know the city again, but it's in Germany. But I guess it's still interesting to see it from the different
No,
perspectives.
but I'm sure there
It's
are
in Hanover.
CVCs. Hanover.
Hanover was it?
So then, of course, there are enough and more CVCs here, and especially the Mittelstand, the families. I think that's a good place to start.
We have another question on social entrepreneurship, which I think I would also take in this regard. This is from Atul Kumar. On how do we scale up a non-profit startup? I would give this to you, Shani. What would you suggest if like a non-profit startup, like a social entrepreneurship startup would come to you?
So basically, I'm facing this issue right now because I'm founding these days like the largest impact fund in terms of the LGBTQ community international. So basically what we did, I think from my personal perspective, was we approached like the most competitive actors in the market. And we did it in two ways. Like the first one was to make the introduction. And second one was to actually make sure that they know that if they go with us and not against us, it will be like a whole joint venture party. So in that terms, I think like it really depends on the impact that you wish to have, but we're focusing on financial impact for a specific community. So we approach like all large banks, insurance companies, and corporations. And we actually took them all together, and with no connection at all of what we do exactly, we sold them like the idea of going together against their own nature because they're competitive in their nature. So they're basically went with the idea, and they put like really amazing and generous soft commitments at the moment. And it's all about like how you prescribe the idea to them. How do you deliver? So I think like it's really depend on the social impact that you're aiming to do, and then you can look at, like in a very creative way of like who is out there that can actually help you with funding. And even if it looks like you have no chance at all to actually reach to these people, to these corporations, huge corporations, eventually if you package it nicely and correctly, and you deliver like the goods in terms of joint venture, and you actually eliminate all competitive sides out of the equation, then you get like a huge amount of goodwill and money to do the impact that you wish to do. So it is very general because I don't know what kind of social impact we're talking about, but I think like this is a very basic thing once you want to raise money for social impact.
That's a good point.
I hope I answered the question somehow.
I think it's still helpful. And like there's always ways, like you still, where's people want to help, people you can connect with. Just to give a very simple example, there's a startup called Ecosia in Germany, which is kind of doing like a search engine, like a Google, but they plant trees with the profits they make. And I know one investor is Tim Schumacher, which is a very well-known entrepreneur from the Cologne region. So where are people who invest in these? And I guess fitting for that, Vidya asked, I will give this to you, Nikhil. Oh yeah,
Michael, can I just add something here?
Sure.
Okay, so on the social impact thing, again, basically going on the basic of the vision of the founder, how they present that same case. Okay, like I think Indian audience and people like who are like doing business with India, I think they can relate it to these two examples that I'm going to give. So we have two founders, okay, right now. They are building a purely, I mean, one guy has actually created a live platform for artists to come and perform, okay, and put up a live show there, a ticketed show, and they're making money, right, sitting at their home. Now, the entire event industry, the entire performance industry, the live performing industry, it's like complete in shattered, okay? So nobody's making money, nobody has bookings, all the events are already cancelled. So this entire industry is basically is facing a survival issue. And this guy, just because he has a live platform for artists to come and the artists are basically unrepresented artists, which are coming from smaller towns, the tier 2, 3, 4 cities. So they are coming on the platform, creating basically a show of their own and earning basically a decent money from one single, and they are guaranteeing every artist some kind of earning, even if it is basically just say $200 sitting at home. If you are getting basically that in a 1 hour of performance, I think that's a great money that they are able to do. So what will you call this kind of project? It is a hugely, they got a very big social impact around it, because they are able to give livelihood and earnings to the people who otherwise don't have anything basically as a skill to earn a livelihood. Similarly, there is another like project which is right now is the biggest campaign going on viral in India. There is a Tata is the biggest company in India, and Tata right now basically Tata Tea, they are running the biggest viral campaign in last 3 days in India. Okay, almost every celebrity, I mean influencer, is talking about that. So it's a Tata Tea campaign. They call it Kullad, which is actually is nothing but a mud mug, which is created by artisans. And this company actually like work with the handicraft artisans and take their product to the international arena, give good placements on airport shops and on internet. So in a sense, they are also doing a great impact job. They are also doing a great social job. But the way they are positioning these guys, the way they are positioning their business is not on the background of the social thing. They are putting on the merit of the business, and then they're telling, okay, now there is a social layer also to this business. So I think it's how you position it. So which layer you want to keep as a front? You want to keep it as a social project which is making money, or you're saying there is a huge like a business merit case I have here and which got a social layer to it. So it's just basically tweaking your positioning and I think connecting it with the audience. That's it. And both of these got very quick funding.
Interesting examples, definitely. And Nikhil seems to be nodding a lot.
No, because it is recently I was in a meeting and I said, so you're a social impact project, and I said, oh, okay, I didn't realize. I mean, we're talking about DueDash here.
Yeah, exactly. So I was about to say this, Nikhil. I mean, how do you define DueDash? Is it a social impact project, or is it a business venture? It's a community business. What exactly will define it? So for me, it's a business. Is a business.
So yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think if you permit, Michael, we could take just a couple of minutes to elaborate on this, because I think this could give some insights.
Yep.
Our community is just a way of making sure that we are delivering value to the people, the entrepreneur, the community at large, which is very narrowly focused on raising capital, onto starting with the entrepreneurship at different stages, somebody who's got just a blurb in the head to somebody who's at a series B, raising capital at series B. So we kind of trying to help a large set of people. On one side, it appears like a social impact project. However, there's a huge amount of AI which is baked into the whole scenario as we go along. I think Michael opened up with information set giving you that, okay, we're going to handhold the whole process. Our machines are going to handhold the whole process of making you taking those steps which will make you investable. We've started with an interim data collection mechanism, and we are seeing that while some people are willing to give up data, a lot of people don't even have that data. Just thinking that you have put together a pitch deck and you go out there, and somebody is just going to give you money because you have an idea, I think that's not going to happen. I don't think it ever happened. Well, somebody may claim otherwise, but I don't think Neeraj or I, at least I can speak for myself, I'm going to put any money on a presentation file. Sorry. You need to, and that does not necessarily mean you need to have a product, right? But at least being able to demonstrate, there are about 8 parameters that we see. I think Neeraj briefly touched upon these parameters, and I've also written an article around it. Maybe one of you, Michael or Marcus, could basically share it with the audience at large. But these are the 8 parameters one could look at and see where they stand, and then prove that there is a potential of traction, if not today, at least tomorrow, and that's a fundable business. And it clearly alludes to the same point, that build your currency of trust very, very early in the day. I'm just expanding what Neeraj said.
Maybe when to close the whole discussion on like social entrepreneurship, I just have one question that was connected to that. I think this is partially already talked about, but here from Vidya, do you have any companies in mind with CVC funds for startups? I guess to you, Nikhil, as is Germany based?
So I think, well, I would be very, however sad it may seem, but most of the CVCs, even for German companies, are based in US.
I guess you might consider a Delaware C Corp then, Vidya. But
yeah,
maybe get
no, unfortunately not. It's okay. I think we are applying, or I prepared or applied for the Niedersachsen Bank pre-seed round right now. So I'm working towards that, and we have a proof of concept. We have some customers lined up, so it's looking a little bit good. And yeah, so we'll take it from there.
And then, of course, get in touch with TS Ventures, as Michael mentioned. Tim is a very good friend of mine, and he is very heavy into social impact. I mean, impact, which is social impact startups, and that does not necessarily mean that they're not going to make money, but social impact startups. And I'm happy to make a warm introduction at
I mean, that will be really great, Nikhil. I think I wrote to you on LinkedIn about it just 2 minutes before.
LinkedIn is not where I spend my time. I spend time on DueDash, so that's really
no problem. I love your community, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you. From where I would say I had a question for you, Shani. From Marcus, he asked, like many founders come to us to ask for funding. What would you tell a startup when it should actually start approaching local global investors? Because you have a lot to do with people who do this global outreach. When is the right time to differentiate between this is local and when you go global?
Actually, usually I leave it up to the startup. Like when they approach to me, they already know like what are the focus, like for the near future or for the far future. So usually they come from a local perspective. Usually in Israel, they don't stay that way for too long. They always look out for like new markets, usually the US, usually Europe. So I would never say to a startup, let's say, he would like to go out for the US, and I would say, no, you're not ready yet. Stay locally. I don't think it's a good idea, because if a startup is aiming to be a part of the USA ecosystem or the European ecosystem, I think they know best like where they should be located, where should they be focused. The only thing I would suggest is that they will know like that where they're looking at. So just make like the basic research, basic business intelligence for knowing like if you just have a dream that you want to go to the US, it's nice, but you're not ready yet. So I won't even have to say it. It's obviously clear. But if they do it from a professional point of view, let's say I have a few ag tech companies in Israel they have developed these products. It's very interesting. It's very successful. And now they want to go to the US, and they don't just like follow their dream of become global. It's nothing like that. They have like good reasons. They know like the market there is very well ready for ag tech startups. They know exactly the places where they can grow their plants or do their technology and make it better and make it grow. So when they approach to me, the only thing that usually they need is for me to make these connections better and faster, and maybe to have like some kind of an input on my side, like what do I know, who do I know over there, are there any local investors at their at the place that they're aiming to. So it's not that I will usually, I won't say to a startup you should stay local, you're not ready yet, or you should go global, because it's not really, it's something that the startup themselves, they should know, like the entrepreneur should know best what is his focus, and start from there, because they don't have to succeed first at a local sphere in order to become like global. It's not.
No, makes sense, definitely. That is, you need to know which direction you're going to take and where you want to go. You briefly also mentioned on customer validation. I think like our validating, I think that's fitting for a question to Niraj. Actually, it's like two questions in one. So Himanshu Agarwal, he kind of said, hey, you need to have your product ready. What about the case when a founder wishes to secure funding at the ideation stage? And then he followed up to say, okay, with customer validation, would a survey with a few target customers serve the purpose?
Okay, so see, Michael, there's no formula actually which fits for all of you. So we need to take on the merit of the of the startup. We have funded idea stage companies also, where there was no product, nothing, but there was something in the deal, okay, that kind of like was very, very compelling for us to fund that company. So we funded a company which is a deep tech company called Orbo. Okay, so they were developing something on the image processing side, a pure deep tech company. And we knew that when we were making the investment, we knew that it will take another minimum 1.5 years before they have something to showcase to the customers. Okay, so it was just a leap of faith because of the founder's background, the kind of work that guy has done. So he got very good global exposure. He worked with some of the best companies, and he knew the problem. Okay, so he knew the pain problem, that this is a one particular issue that needs to be solved. So we funded that guy, and for almost 1.5 years there was nothing, no product, no sales, no enterprise client, absolutely nothing, not even a POC, because he need to first finish the research. But this guy uh, later on created something so remarkable that Intel invested in this company. Yeah, and Vinod Dham, basically, who is supposed to be father of basically Indian deep tech community, he invested on a personal capacity, and then later on, so many other people kind of just rallied around it. Okay, so it just at least like 6-7 examples I can quote from my portfolio where we have funded. In some cases, we have funded companies where it was a second or a third venture of that founding team. They really created something great in past. Now they are sitting on a new idea, and the idea stage they have come to us, and we have funded those guys. There is a company called Hospal right now in our portfolio company. Now the founder of this company is a guy called Danish. Now this guy sold 2 companies, one to Flipkart and one to Paytm, both the unicorns. So now imagine if, and both the times we helped this guy in past also. So the third time when he was setting up his company, just, I mean, it's such an interesting stuff that Nikhil, he came to us with 2 ideas. Okay. And he said, I want to do one of these ideas. I want to take you in right at the idea stage. I want to just take your feedback that which one I should do. So he came with 2 ideas, and we kind of like 5, 6 of us had a very casual like meeting in a coffee shop, and we just were there to give him a feedback. And just because we have that kind of like confidence in the team, because they have built and sold and scaled companies, so even when he is coming to us basically with 2 minds, he was not even decided that which idea I should stick to and follow and pursue. So we unanimously, all of us, we felt that okay, now his readiness for the this hospital business, which is actually is a medical tourism kind of stuff. So his preparation, the readiness, and the execution that he was able to bring on that idea, I mean, we were all convinced that he can pull that idea off. And then and there in that coffee shop meeting where he was there just to take a feedback on the idea, we kind of like committed on that deal. And I can tell you that in the next 3 months when he was building his product, just based on the WhatsApp and email, he created a business which was basically on a monthly basis. He was doing almost 2 CR, which is roughly around say 700K. So that much of business he was doing, because imagine he was just serving 20 clients, and every client is a 10 lakh business in Indian currency. Because any family which is coming to India for a surgery, the transaction value of that one single transaction was very, very high. So he was just serving 20 clients, okay, that he was serving through just using a WhatsApp and an email, and just by all the kind of like manual intervention. But he could generate GMV. He could generate transactions, okay, between the hospitals, and he was able to deliver value. So I think that's the kind of approach that at times made you take notice of the founders, okay, even at the idea stage, you don't mind funding those guys.
Absolutely. So basically what you're alluding to, Neeraj, is that, you know, a past history, past experience of a founder is critical. So, you know, you basically, so what we are essentially saying is that yes, PPTs or even ideas can get funded, but
Yes.
you see what you are saying here is that he executed it. He didn't wait for a technical product to come alive. He just did it over a WhatsApp or any, just an email, random hand. So just to prove that there is market for it. And that exactly what I'm trying to say in my article also. I'm saying there are 8 dimensions which can prove to a potential investor that yes, you are the right team to bet upon, right? So, I mean, interesting that you pointed out about Vinod Dham. He's not just a father of deep tech in India. I think for the public in general, he is the inventor of Intel's Pentium chip.
Yes, he is.
He was there. I met him in December last.
Yeah, so he backed that company, and I mean, it's such a full circle for that company that Intel in the last tech conference, which is one of the like, biggest tech conference in the world, for almost 8 minutes out of their 20-minute presentation, they were talking about this innovation of
And
Orgo.
you know what? And you know what? This basically proves one thing. Traction proves product market fit. It doesn't, the product is the entire, what your product is, not the technology. We tend to confuse technology with the product.
For us it's very simple, okay. It is how you package your storytelling, okay. There has to be something very, very compelling in your story. Like for example, right now, so I am working on a deal right now. The guys are a middle level, they're not even CXOs, they are middle level executive in one of the biggest e-commerce company in India. Now these guys for last 7 years were creating categories or new categories within the e-commerce platform, working with merchandise guys, designers, fabricators, and all of that. And in between, they have figured out there is a arbitrage that they can work on. Okay, arbitrage which is purely is on the supply and the demand, okay, side of it. How quickly you can you can create something just based on the, so I click on their site, I ask for a t-shirt, and there's no t-shirt available right now. Okay, so it's a zero inventory business that they created, because they have really like worked out a great supply chain model. There is nothing in their story, but just because for last 7 years they were doing something, and they are very good at that, and they have figured out that there is something that they can work on. So by the time somebody clicks and place an order, and by the time it gets processed and go back to the vendor, and he fulfills that, so they have find out that there is a better way to do it. You do not even have to have an inventory. You take an order, go back to the fabrication shop, create that product and ship it within that same time period. Now this is a great process innovation that these guys have done. Nothing. It's just a process innovation these guys have done.
Correct.
And there is a huge upside, because, and they could have gone on and just doing their job, but just because of the COVID situation, this whole slowdown, the e-commerce was not doing great. Okay, and they had a lot of time, and during this time they have kind of like evaluated all their past 3 years of data, and they have analyzed that data, and they have figured out something very unique as a business proposition there. Okay, that was just a data digging and finding and doing something basically, and evaluating your processes, and just slight tweak in that is giving a huge advantage to these guys. So we are funding them, because they have done a one month experiment also on this same arbitrage of supply chain, and in the very first month they got almost 20 lakh rupees of business. No inventory. Imagine.
That's the kind of businesses VCs love, right?
Yeah, obviously.
Absolutely.
A business in the air they have created, and the model is something which is very scalable.
So basically it goes back to the team, you know, and their expertise, their knowledge, depth of knowledge. Yeah. That's excellent. Yeah.
There's one more open question, I think, like, which I wanted to give to you, Nikhil, which is interesting. We talked about kind of like how even with just an idea you can get funding if the team is fitting, if you have other things to show for. But Vishal asks, which startups are not fundable at all? Any exceptions in history?
If I was to tell you the Airbnb story, 99% of the venture community thought that it's not fundable. It's a $50 billion valuation today, right? Of course, I don't know. I'm post-COVID, whether they'll nobody would have predicted COVID, but let's face it, you know. So, of course, you know, there are so many businesses which I would say 80% of the businesses, it's not the business in itself which is sometimes not fundable. Sometimes it's the team. It's a multitude of factors, you know, whether it's a lot of fluff or whether it is, at least again, you know, it's very subjective. It is what we are essentially trying to solve. DueDash is that, you know, we're trying to build a method, a cognitive method in the whole process, right? So far, this is based on a human assessment of things. As I said, you know, in the beginning, that Airbnb was a business which everybody thought is non-fundable. 99.9% of the investment community thought that. So effectively, you know, if the people, again, I come back to that, if people know the team, the value of team, we can't really underestimate that. What is their depth? What is their capability? Knowing the market size, you know, knowing that little opening, that opportunity, as Neeraj recently just pointed out in his previous example, was about that arbitrage opportunity. And if done correctly, executed correctly, it can lead to a lot of business. Then, of course, you know, I'm sure using that opportunity or assessment, understanding of that opportunity, being able to create a business model which is viable in the long run. And then effectively what VCs or any investor realistically likes to know is, how will you make me the money? How will you make money is, of course, you know, is secondary. Actually, if we look at a brutal VC space, all they care about is how is it that you're going to make money for me. And it's a full chain. Don't look at just a venture capitalist or an angel investor. You're looking at, they are answerable to their LPs, and the LPs may be eventually answerable to public at large. Depends on what are their sources of funds, but effectively it's a full chain. So you need to remember that the VCs, or you need to be able to tell the investors how is it that they're going to make them rich, period.
I would think they would just go through the last two questions. I hope you all, you're still free, have some time, because at like around 7 p.m. German time, but I would just go these last two questions, and then I guess we can close here. I would give one here from Seto Sharma to you, Shani. Other way, the other way around, from Marcus. Another question that's often asked: what's the best way to get in contact with investors?
What is the best way? Sorry.
The best way to get in contact with investors.
That's a good question. So basically, I can tell you a bit of a crazy story. So the craziest way I approach investor, I think, was I used to be a security officer for many, many years, for more than 15 years. And I did all kind of roles and took all kind of positions. And one methodology was like the major one. And it's generally speaking about be creative. So let's say I wanted to approach an investor, which is a very, very high-end kind of a family office kind of investor. And there's no way you can approach to these guys unless you have like a good connection. So craziest thing I've ever done was to actually look at their company exhibition. And I was going there as a producer. And I gave production services for real. But once I saw the guy entering this exhibition, I just approach and say, listen, I just couldn't reach you like anywhere else. I know it's out of the box here. I know it's super rude, but I don't mind. We really have to talk for 5 minutes. And this guy, surprisingly, was looking at me and he was like, aren't you from production? And I was like, yes, for now, but you know, I do other stuff as well. And I started to tell him about my business and my matchmaking services and startups. And we were talking for nearly 20 minutes. And this was like the best time I've ever had with an investor, because it was so crazy, so unique. And therefore, like, the answer to the question is that there is no like one way, one route, it really depends. It depends on who you're after and what you want to achieve from the guy. And I did my own business intelligence, and I knew like where this guy is going to be and have enough time to have this talk. And the creativity here is very crucial. Like, you have to approach investors in all kind of ways. It can be very conservant, but also be creative, take initiative, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but at least you tried. So I guess this is like my motto from here.
That's definitely a good point. Being creative, having these, like, thinking about out of the box.
Michael, can I add on this?
Yeah, sure. Add to that, Niraj.
Okay. So we at Venture Catalyst has a very unique take on this. See, personally, I feel, and that is what my friend Apurva, who is also the founder of Venture Catalyst, we funded 100 companies. And 70% of these companies, actually, we got funders who are first-time investors. Okay. because we believe that everybody is an investor. That's how founders should look at this problem. Because the problem is that if they start looking at people like who are designated as an angel investors, then the proportion of those guys are very, very less. Why don't you first try in your own circle of trust? As Nikhil is mentioning again and again, trust is something that you need to build. So first look out for the people who already trust you. Your neighbors, your friends, your family, your friends of friends. I mean, all those guys are could be basically a potential investor in you. It's just basically you have to go and tell a compelling story in them, because they anyway trust you. So if you have something very good as a business idea, I think I don't think that anybody of any one of them will not try to be in that round. So if you're raising a small round, okay, and if you're saying that, can you give me a commitment? I will go out and I'll talk to the strangers also, but can I get a commitment from your side? Just pull in that commitment, go out to a new strange or a designated angel, tell him that 70% of my round is already done. I just need 30%. Okay. So I think he will fund you. And that is how most of our guys have raised money. And we have introduced 2 years back, based on this philosophy, something internally in our portfolio. And that was, we started talking to the senior founders in the portfolio who have raised basically Series A and onwards. We asked these guys, would you mind basically looking at some of the pipeline deals that we are bringing in as a mentor, as an investor also? And I can tell you, in last 2 years, we have at least 20-25 success stories where a senior founder have mentored a person basically who is there as a pipeline and also invested in the round. So imagine a founder investing in a founder. So we have taken this whole thing and the learning from this 2 years of so many successful fundings that we could create internally inside the community, and that's a network effect. So now we have taken this out and we are building a larger community of senior Series A onward founders who are very, very open to the idea of investing in startups, seed stage startups. So that's whole. Now imagine basically, right now we were doing this from last 2 years within the community. Now we are taking it outside, okay, and we're going to all the networks, all the VC portfolios, and we are approaching anyone and anybody that in case, if I bring you something which is very strategic to your growth, would you mind like mentoring those very exciting bunch of founders? And would you mind basically investing a small check to those guys? And they're very, very happy. So this whole thing we are now building into a kind of a business model, a platform called V Founder Circle. And I think it's working beautifully. We have not even launched it, but we already funded four startups just by this this approach. So I think investors are all over the place, okay, around you. You just have to take a chance, go to them, and just kind of like share your story.
That's a great point. Just be open about these things. As we are already a bit over time, I would kind of like ask all of you kind of like as a closing statement, if there's anything you guys want to add from your side regarding fundraising, and then maybe how can people reach you best? So I guess maybe for you, Shani, if they want to support on the fundraising journey, for you, Nikhil, I guess it's on feedback, anything you want to know, and of course for Neeraj, if they are interested getting connected with venture catalysts. Maybe let's start here with Nikhil first, and then to Shani, and then lastly Neeraj. On how to best reach you, and of course some last words you have to our audience.
So I'm here, all available on DueDash platform. That's where I live. So most welcome to see me here. As far as so I mean it's not that we're not currently writing checks, but we are very we are writing checks mostly on more mature companies or mature founders. So if however we can definitely help you, I mean, and it's not just me, I speak for the entire team of DueDash, we can help you in terms of creating those trust assets, in validating those trust assets, whether which makes you basically help you stand in front of the investors to be able to answer people like Neeraj, who is actively investing. Congratulations, Neeraj. Ritesh joined your team today, I heard.
Yeah,
Yeah, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So being able to stand in front of them, fundamentally, that would be the whole thing. Of course, keep waiting, keep, we are continuously putting out new set of products with a lot of AI baked into it, and we'll be able to guide you pretty much on every step of the way as you go along.
Thank you, Nikhil. Then from you, Shani, some last words, and how should people reach out to you?
Last word is very dramatic.
Okay, let's.
So basically, I would like to share that my main focus as a business of matchmaker is to take like all kind of investigative questionnaire methods and putting it together with like the arena of investments. So as a security officer, I used to do a lot of questionnaire, and I think like every startup who is looking for an investor and would like my help or my team to help on reaching out to investors. So the best thing to know about my business would be that even if I don't have an investor right now in my network, I would definitely do my own research and know how to approach to the investor who I think is a potential investor. And even if he is not a potential investor for your case, it will be for others. And it goes like vice versa. So my network is basically made out of investors, VCs, family offices, and other kind of investing kind of people like private investors and so on. And I know about almost everything about them because I do like a 3 hours questionnaire. I know everything about their families. I know everything. My bottom line is everything is personal. So either if you approach me or you go to some other matchmaking company or you go directly to the investor, make sure you know your investor. Make sure you make like the proper connection, the personal connection. Make sure to be interested on what is his focus in life. Like if you don't waste your time, if you don't waste his time, it's better for everyone. So do like the right kind of research before. And this is like the main thing I think you should take from here. And the best way to reach me, I think, is via either DueDash or LinkedIn. I hope Nikhil doesn't mind that I mention LinkedIn here.
All's good. It's all good. It is a preferred method of reaching. Thank you, Shani, also. And then also Niraj, some closing remarks from your side, and how should people reach out to you, venture capitalists?
So my remark is actually just a confidence to you, Michael. I know you. Nikhil is a good friend. So is I just met Shani, and to everyone, I mean, who's there as a participant in this show. I just want to give all of you a confidence that keep sending me deals. There is no dearth of angel investors with us. We are happy to take all kind of like options. Just give us one good deal. And I'm telling Nikhil that he's saying that he is only cutting checks to the mature startups. We are funding all early stage. So you send us all early stage deals. We are more than happy to work with DueDash. All kind of opportunities you can send it to us. We are cutting checks and we have a lot of like investors with us.
So I think Neeraj, that's very good. I think you should join the investor lounge on DueDash.
I will do that, sir.
Because there are some very interesting deals, and most of these startups, they started the journey with us pretty much, and we've just passed through about $8-9 million worth of funding through the process.
Sure.
Check it
More
out.
than happy.
Maybe one last thing, then how should people reach out to you, venture capitalists? What's your preferred method usually with the deals or like startups?
So I'm there on Twitter, I'm there on LinkedIn.
And
and
soon
I
you'll
am
do that.
now with, and so I was saying that I am there on DueDash. So I mean, you can approach me from anywhere. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to being here. Nikhil, Shani, Niraj, I think it was a great session with a lot of questions and a lot of
Great
people
talking to
joining
you.
also in. It was very interesting, and I think you could take a lot from that. I hope all of you guys, if you have more questions, reach out to them, come on DueDash, ask them. And, you know, we want to really help you on your journey, become investable startups, because at the end of the day, the ones who will drive impact on this planet and create jobs are startups. So really hope for you to make the best out of it. Thank you all.
Thank you
Thanks,
very much.
Michael.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Nikhil.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have a
Thanks.
great evening, everybody.